Dwayne Kaufman does a lot to help preserve what we've been talking about today. He is our archivist, and so he does a lot of work in a place where few people see him. He's seldom recognized, but he does a lot of work in helping record and preserve the stories and the records of Christopher Dock, and we really appreciate his work that is not very often noticed. Very humbled to even be a part of this story. The vision of Dock does continue. Institutions are fascinating. We each write a part of the Dock story, and we step into this story more actively at some times than others. I would suggest that we never step out of the story once we step into it. And under or over all of these stories that we're hearing, and the vision that continues is a meta-narrative. A meta-narrative is simply the grand story that provides the framework for our individual stories. And the meta-narrative that is a part of the Dock story, the meta-narrative from a Christian perspective really is the story of God calling this community to a cause grander and greater than ourselves. Preparing young people to lead in our Mennonite churches, in our communities, in our world, and we recognized many of those people last evening, and we've heard stories this morning. Preparing young people to lead from a particular perspective of the Anabaptist Mennonites as we understand God's call to reconciliation and redemption in our world. And as we weave these stories together, we must always ask the question of what comes next. We do this for the sake of the next generation, because we want this story to continue to be relevant. And so it's important that in a morning when we reflect on the past that we also, and I was impressed that Hiram is even asking questions of the future and suggestions for moving forward, because that is important while we remember that we also think about moving forward. I just want to share a couple of the changes that I have noticed and expect to see continue in the next decades. The first student body at this school, there was a total of 112 students. All except 2 of those students were Caucasian. They were Mennonite. There were 2 African American students who were not Mennonite. So we began with a 1.8% ethnic diversity in our student body. We currently have about a 29% ethnic diversity here in our student body. That has been a tremendous change that continues. So almost a third of our students, 1 out of 3, does not look like me. That's significant, I believe. This year we began with 16 students, most of them international students, in a dollhouse. A facility set up to not be a dorm, but to be a homestay for a group of international students. And in our second year, we opened at capacity for that house. We have about 56 international students. That would represent about half of the diversity, ethnic diversity that we have at this school. We have a lot of other types of diversity. We have socioeconomic diversity. That probably is greater than it was in earlier years. We have denominational diversity. Today, 43% of our students are Mennonite. That would be compared to 98.2% when we began. But if you just look at our local students, if you take out the international students, we still have over half of the students, 51% of our local students would be from the Mennonite Anabaptist faith. We do have some students who come without a faith background, particularly some of our international students. We have an introduction to Bible class, which is something new and a delightful opportunity that we have to share for the first time for some students the message of Christ. We have great cultural diversity. We have learning style diversity that perhaps is greater than before. We have students who attend our school because of Joan Grega, the person who heads our learning support program. She does a marvelous job of taking young people who learn in different ways and helping mainstream them. We continue to feel that it's best to have this diversity, all the types of diversity that I've mentioned. We see that as an incredible opportunity that we have, that really as we work at the mission, and the mission's on the back of your program, as we work at preparing young people for a global society, for the world that they're going to move to, that we have an opportunity that was not here at the beginning of the school, to help young people learn together with those who are very different from themselves, both ethnically, socioeconomic background, the way they learn, that as we mainstream, as we study together, it's more representative of the world that they're going to move into. We see this as a tremendous opportunity. The international perspective from Doc is something that has always been seen as a part of the greater meta-narrative of this school. This has been a priority, and you've heard that woven throughout the stories this morning. Lee Yoder moving to Egypt to start a school. You heard how music had an international component. Lane Warrior, when she left this place, moved directly into the MEA to give leadership to a broad group of Mennonite schools. This year, when I asked the board, the current board, whether I would have time to chair the Mennonite Schools Council, they gave a very hearty approval and encouragement, seeing that connection to things beyond ourselves is very important. The Mennonite Schools Council currently is a group of schools from the U.S., Canada, and Puerto Rico. We now have affiliate member schools in Albania and Colombia, so we're connecting beyond. Bronwyn's currently teaching an online course for a sister school in Albania. Zach's class, you'll meet him in just a moment, has been interacting through Skype with a class in China, one of the schools several of us have visited. I'm frequently asked if we would consider starting a Christopher Dock in Beijing. These international connections are incredible, and the opportunity there is changing, and we are looking at taking advantage of the opportunities that God brings us. I'll just mention technological changes. That's something we tend to notice maybe more than other things. This year, for the first time, each student arrived and received an iPad as a part of a one-to-one program. This is something very new. You may recall the technology of your day, the mimeograph machines, the overhead projectors, whiteboards being new, calculators, computers. We've lived through lots of changes. We're very excited about the opportunity for the one-to-one program, not just in that it is potentially someday replacing textbooks, but the opportunity that it's presenting for engaging in collaborative learning and creativity. It's also an opportunity for us to talk with young people about digital citizenship. How do I make wise decisions as a young person, knowing that there are many options out there for me? Instead of knowing which section in the library to go to, we help students think about how do I take all the information that is there and find what is reputable, what is true, what is good and relevant. As we think ahead, this school has had a number of stages of strategic planning. GPS 2012, the globally positioned students for 2012, was the last major process. We just completed that, and we are now working with the other two Mennonite schools in the community, Penview and Quakertown Christian School, to work with Rick Stiffney from the Mennonite Health Services Alliance to begin the next stage of strategic planning. So our board will be meeting with him. In December and February, there will be a strategic forum as we continue to ask questions of what comes next. What does the next 60 years look like? We are preparing students for a future that no one knows. It's why it's essential that we prepare students who are flexible, who are lifelong learners. Just a final comment about the founders and this group. Each of you have a part of the story at Christopher Dock, an important one. Unfortunately, this morning we can't hear all of those stories. But I would suggest that you never step out of this story. You will always be a part of the story. Sometimes your story is more actively involved, and sometimes not so much. But it really is in understanding our history and our past that we have the ability to plan for the change that will keep DOG relevant for students and families in 2020. And your continued contribution to DOG is your reminder to us of this foundation on which the school was built at the beginning of this story. So what is important to remember? What are the values that will never change? What are the things that must be changed? How does an institution hold to the values of 1954 and change to meet the needs of students in 2013? Recently I wrote in probably a Newsline article or Lamplighter that a school must be firmly grounded in its mission, and I would do that into its foundation, yet flexible enough to change with a fresh interpretation of the mission in light of the changing community. We must keep writing the story for future generations so that the work that you began will continue. And your key in this conversation, in this journey, in this story. There's so much I don't know about the past, and that's why a morning like this is very helpful and important to me. I value my relationship with the founders and getting to hear the stories and the values from the beginning of the school. The foundation you crafted here and the mission of DOG will continue to guide our progress and direction. God's meta-narrative will continue to provide the framework for each of our individual stories. Each year lives are shaped and stories are expanded. These stories give evidence of God's grace in the lives of students, faculty, board members, and our community. These stories are lived in the context of a unique, caring community that offers love, acceptance, and accountability. We welcome an increasingly diverse group of families to join this community. I trust the founders that you, who began this work at DOG, are pleased to see how this small seed has grown. You may grieve that some changes that are made that you think are best not made. That's okay to grieve some of that as the story unfolds. But we all root for the 345 students here today in enjoying this place. Many of them very aware of this group and what you have done to make what they're experiencing possible. But this morning we have remembered, and this is important, and I would say you are allowed to smile and to be pleased with what you have helped make possible here. May God continue to guide our story. May God continue to establish and bless the work of our hands. Thank you. We want to take just a moment to welcome Zach Bauer, a teacher who is working to help preserve the stories. And we want to just hear a little bit of what he is doing here. Zach's a graduate of EMU, spent a year at Germany in Black Forest Academy, taught a year at Penn View, and then came to Crystal Rock in 2008, the year before I came here. He works just a little connection here to the DOG House. He's our administrative liaison to the DOG House. And he's a current social studies teacher. So we've asked him just to tell you something he's working on to help preserve the stories.